With classic WoW out, unexpected mechanics and weird interactions with spell batching and other things have been discovered. Hunter has arguably been the most impacted class so far, because of numerous mechanics that changed a lot. There are plenty of things to talk about, but I summed it up to a list of the 10 most important things to my eyes so you can easily understand what's up. One of the biggest game changers that hunters have to deal with is the huge diminishing return list. There are a lot of spells that trigger each other's diminishing return. Here is a list of all those spells. This decreases a lot the 1v1 potential that Hunter could have. This forces hunters to play way less aggressive and play far more safe by exploiting their huge range and their kiting abilities. Playing with a mage is also way less enjoyable because the ship will trigger the DR of all the hunters' CCs and vice versa. Although it is not that much of a big deal in World PvP and BGs because you will usually be using your CCs on different targets. There's also a case where DR plays in Hunter's favor. I will talk about that later on. After casting Feign Death, weapon swing cooldown is triggered, meaning you lose a lot of damage in any 1v1 scenario. This delay is also triggered by popping consumables like Noggin Fogger or pots for some reason. It is still debated whether that's how it should be or not, as nobody has been able to provide a video to prove the way this spell is supposed to work. If you do have a video proving the way it's supposed to work, please send me the link. Most importantly, Feign Death is impacted by a huge delay that can sometimes be up to 1 second, which is insanely huge. This has been acknowledged by Blizzard as a bug and they are currently working to fix it. In the meantime, an easy way to hit your Feign Death trap combo is to CC your opponent before using a grenade or intimidation. The leeway, whether it's for melee or spells, changed a lot the way we, hunters, play, as it is really impactful in all our matchups considering how sensitive melee range is for a class that has a 8-yard dead zone. Warriors and rogues are harder to kite, making hunters play in a much more conservative and safe way. Mages are also more dangerous because the wider range they have with spells like Frost Nova or Cone of Cold. A way to counter leeway is making sure your opponent is slowed to deactivate the leeway. This can be done using Wing Clip, Frost Trap and some gadgets such as Disco Bombulator. Spell batching was expected to be in Classic. Private server veterans will say it is far different from the spell batching they were used to. Some would even say that it is bigger than in vanilla. This changes a bit the way hunters are played as well. Players getting into traps will sometimes get an unexpected harm string off as they get frozen because of that spell batching window. There is also an impact on ranged procs. For instance, if a hunter using an item such as Dwarven Hand Cannon casts Scattershot and the item procs of Scattershot, it will break the scatter because, for some reason, the proc will be on the batch following the scatter. This also applies to improved concussive shot, meaning the stun will happen a bit later than the slow. This is a huge one. Pet delay is omnipresent for any hunter used to micromanaging his pet in a very accurate way. Unfortunately, we have to deal with a delay between the input of the command and the beginning of the action for the pet. I have personally witnessed up to 1 second of delay, but I've heard people saying it could be more. This might seem to be an insignificant amount for you, but it is a big deal for any experienced player, because it really makes it way harder to use your pet in a dynamic way. For instance, doing outplays, such as dodging an anticipated incoming Nova from the mage you are fighting, by micromanaging your pet in a smart way will be way harder, since you'll have to take into account 1 second of delay. This makes things like that almost impossible, considering how many things could happen in 1 second in the PvP world. There is a badging for the trap activation. I'm unsure what the size of it is, but here's how it works. The server will check for the position of the player every X second. The trap will only trigger if an enemy player is detected on the trap hitbox as the patching hits. Meaning a player could go through your trap if he comes in and out of it within that time window. This considerably changes all PvP matchups because smart opponents can literally go through your trap with the proper tool. For instance, an add-on tracking the server position tick would allow players to know when they can go above the trap without triggering it. Usually, a speed boost will be required. I've seen players with only aspect of the cheetah able to go through my trap without triggering it. A player with an epic mount going through your trap will almost never trigger it. This shuts down all outplay's opportunity when being chased by a 100% mounted player, as leading him into your trap will be worthless. There are at least some good news for Hunter. For instance, traps triggering will not put you in combat, but it will put your opponents in combat. This can be exploited by putting frost traps or explosive traps in very important areas where your opponents are likely to go for eating or drinking purposes, as it is a safe spot, in Warsong Tunnel for instance. This will keep them in combat for a very long period of time, forcing them to go out of your trap AoE and potentially exposing themselves to big damage. There are two cases where the diminishing return discoveries worked out well for hunters, and that is for improved wing clip and entrapment. Both of those talents are not reduced by diminishing return. This makes those talents way more interesting. Entrapment can be used to chain CC multiple opponents via Frost Trap for instance. It will have a chance to proc every 2 seconds approximately. This can end up in a very long and frustrating route for your opponent and a very enjoyable rapid fire session for you. An interesting new behavior is multi-shot. Everything is pretty normal, except for one thing. The extra shots will chain to other opponents that are in your initial target slots, and not yours. This means that you can, for instance, hit people behind walls if your initial target is in loss of it, even though you're not. This can be exploited to hit people that you wouldn't be able to hit otherwise. Lastly, another important mechanic that impacts hunters is aura delay. Aura delay impacts all spells considered as auras. For hunters, those spells will be True Shot Aura, Aspect of the Pack, Aspect of the Wild, Frost Trap, Explosive Trap, and finally Flare. The way aura delay works is, there will be a delay between the moment the creature is in range of the aura and the moment it is applied or removed. I believe it is operating on a certain batch timer as well, meaning it is every X seconds that the aura will either be applied or removed. This allows rogues, for instance, to open upon a hunter sitting in flare if they get lucky with the aura delay, or rogues getting their vanish cancelled even though they've been out of flare range for 5 seconds. In the end, all of these new mechanics force hunters to adapt and adopt a new playstyle, far more different than what they could afford to play like on private servers. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Hunters now need to rely way more on their ability to kite and outrange their opponents, whereas before they could just abuse CCs and easily kite melees out of their dead zone. The only thing really killing Hunter as of now is the feint as delay, that makes it extremely hard to trap properly against any reactive opponents. Once that is fixed, Hunters should be great again. I hope you enjoyed this video. I am now starting to work on multiple PvP guides to cover everything you need to know in PvP. Many hunters come to Discord and ask around for tips and tricks in different stuff, so I think it's time they get a source they know they can rely on and trust. In the meantime, you can always hop on my Discord server and ask questions. There's also a FAQ section with very detailed answers to frequently asked questions, such as how to win X matchup as a hunter. If you wanna see what hunters are capable of in the current state of the game PvP wise, you can always hop onto my Twitch.